So Canadian truckers continuing their protests against Justin Trudeau's vaccine passports, vaccine mandates, COVID restrictions. Now, nearly 2 years into it, and we were told it was going to be 2 weeks to slow the spread, then 3 weeks to slow the spread, and then, just be patient. COVID-19 restrictions being lifted elsewhere, but not in other places like in Canada. This while, of course, as we talked about last half hour, about schools in Illinois still grappling with what to do with the judge's COVID-19 mask order, ultimately saying that the governor's mask mandate in schools is null and void and that districts need to handle their situation appropriately. But you do see that, again, students are able to read. At least most of them are, right? And they read the news and see these headlines, and some may have even read the judge's ruling on this last week, saying that the governor seemed to circumvent due process when it comes to quarantine. And those students reading this, again, raising their concerns here about continued COVID-19 mandates. And this is coming from, again, students that were in a gymnasium in District 128, and they were ultimately put into a gymnasium because they refused to wear masks, and they shared some of their thoughts with administrators as to their individual rights and how they should be respected with their individual rights.
You can't use it off of Pritzker's mandate because that was ruled unconstitutional and void, and you can't use it off the Illinois Department of Public Health because it's also overturned. So it's just the school's decision to make every single student quarantine and wear a mask. And if so, we should all have our day in court to represent why we need to wear a mask and give us our due process. Instead of just assuming we're guilty and masking every child in the school, you need to give us our day in court and explain to us why we need to quarantine and wear a mask around individuals.
So again, just some of the feelings that some students are having across the state. I think that exemplifies just a little bit of one perspective. Of course, you have other students that are going to school wearing masks, but pushback on mask mandates elsewhere. A group of Chicago aldermen demanding that Mayor Lori Lightfoot lift the vaccine mandate in restaurants that requires people to show vaccine proof along with a state ID in order to go to a restaurant. They want to lift that for this weekend's Super Bowl so that people can enjoy themselves without these mandates. We'll see what happens with that request. But when requests like that go unheard, you have what happens up in Canada, and that is the ongoing freedom convoy, they're calling themselves, and of truckers protesting, and it's leading to trade being impacted here in the United States with Canada. And you've got some vehicle manufacturers that are highlighting some of the problems they're having on getting their products back and forth, because there's a lot of back and forth trade when it comes to the vehicle manufacturing industry. But you have the Freedom Convoy blocking the Ambassador Bridge that's at Windsor, Ontario, and Detroit, Michigan, and that's disrupting a lot of the flow of these goods back and forth. And you have the U.S. Department of Homeland Security saying in a bulletin for local and state law enforcement agencies about reports of truckers planning to potentially block roads in major metropolitan cities in protest against vaccine mandates and other issues. So even Homeland Security here in the U.S. seems to indicate that we've got a growing movement here in the United States that could try to protest these various mandates. What do you think about all of this? 217-629-7970. Where do you stand? Should truckers have a right to do these types of protests? Truckers of the world unite, and taking some direct action. And we've seen direct action in the past when it comes to other issues, like, for instance, police brutality. We've seen direct action across the entire country in protests of that type of thing. And that seemed to get a lot of support across the political spectrum. Nobody wants police brutality. But when it comes to this particular issue about vaccine mandates, you're seeing this different type of protest arise, and fascinating to see the impacts of it because, of course, it's impacting trade. It's impacting the manufacturing of vehicles and so on. But what's also fascinating is the government's response, or their attempt to try to diminish the capabilities of these protests. We've talked about the GoFundMe situation where how much was it? It was like $10 million that GoFundMe had taken in donations for the so-called Freedom Convoy. And then you had GoFundMe freeze that account with millions of dollars in it, freezing that account and ultimately having to give back some refunds to people who donated. But even there, you've got the ongoing questions about whether that was legit, and some Republicans in the United States looking to investigate GoFundMe for the actions, including Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. He said GoFundMe's response to an anti-mandate pro-liberty movement should ring alarm bells to anyone using the donation platform and, more broadly, any American wanting to protect their constitutional rights. So apparently he is launching an investigation into GoFundMe. We'll see exactly how far that goes. Meanwhile, while GoFundMe froze that particular fundraising effort, a different fundraising effort on a different website started, and this website is Give, Send, Go, and it's apparently a Christian fundraising platform. And they've had several different programs, one a Freedom Convoy 2022 program and an Adopt a Trucker program where people are donating to, and they've raised substantial funds as well. $8 million they've raised. And in a statement, the Give, Send, Go CEO on Twitter wrote that know this: Canada has absolutely zero jurisdiction over how we manage our funds here at Give, Send, Go. It adds that any funds for every campaign on Give, Send, Go flow directly to the recipients of those campaigns, not least of which is the Freedom Convoy campaign. So we'll see how that campaign also goes. But this is just some direct action that the truckers are taking to stand up against COVID-19 mandates, and also comes in the face of all of the smearing that's been happening with the media in Canada, trying to say that it's a bunch of racists and violent people that are part of these protest movements, but that's not the case at all. If you look at people who are on the ground actually reporting on who these truckers are, it's a very diverse mix of people: immigrants who are truckers, blue-collar workers who are just trying to make a living, that have been out there doing the work of logistics for all the pandemic. And some of you out there know this well. You're driving a truck right now. You're either carrying a lot of cargo, or you're a delivery driver, or you're in the sanitation industry, and you've been out in the thick of it all pandemic, right? And listen, I've not worked from home for this radio program the entire time. Even the snowstorm last week didn't keep me from coming in. But still, it's I've seen the truckers out there whenever the stay-at-home orders were implemented. The only things on the highway were the truckers, and they were getting goods where they needed to go. So even though 90% of truckers in Canada apparently are vaccinated, they still don't want to have these ongoing continued mandates that they feel is limiting their freedom and bringing discord to their way of being able to be represented. So you've got some movement there with the Canadian truckers. And again, I think one big sticking point here is in the United States, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security has put out a bulletin to local and state law enforcement, essentially saying that there could be a convoy here in the U.S. that could quite possibly try to limit the movement of goods into big cities in protest of vaccine mandates. So all of this coming together, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the days and weeks ahead, as there's reports out of Canada of police taking gas cans, of police arresting people for honking their horn, and so on. So love to hear your thoughts on that. You can always email me, bishoponair@gmail.com. Again, bishoponair@gmail.com, or find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Just search out Bishop on